And we're going to switch gears. I've been beating on you about the kids, okay? And now we're going to talk about husband-wife relationship. And I got to tell you that my understanding, or my repertoire, if I could use that word, of verses that deal with the family was so very limited. It's pretty much what I've been taught by the men before me, and not really gone in any depth. And then I realized I got notes upon notes. I got notes on my notes. Okay, there's so much information, and this is just one example of husband-wife relationships in the Bible. And all of them are giving you a different, can I say dynamic, or a different situation that they're dealing with. I mean, God did that on purpose to where you have all these different situations and you see the outcome of the decisions made by these people. So that's what we're going to talk about this morning. In particular, it's going to be Isaac and Rebekah. I just chose Isaac and Rebekah because that's the thing that came to mind first. But I could have chosen people before them, of course. And we're going to cover different ones, but I will see how much we get through. I've actually got more illustrations here, but it's Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah, they start out whirlwind romance. I mean, a type of Abraham's servant, a type of the Holy Spirit, goes and finds Rebekah, calls out a bride for Abraham's son. The picture is just beautiful. And Rebekah is, she's beautiful. She wears a veil over her face when she sees her bridegroom. And I mean, you know, and they lived happily ever after, right? Well, not so much. As is in real life, what starts out as a whirlwind romance kind of ended kind of dull and kind of dead. And I've entitled this, Not Seeing Eye to Eye. All right, turn to Genesis chapter 27. I'm going to do a little reading here. Lord willing, I can keep all, like I said, I got notes on my notes on my notes, and every time I read it, I see something else, and then that leads me somewhere else, and then I'm totally confused about where I'm going. Anyway, in Genesis 27, starting in verse 1, it says, "And it came to pass that when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim." Now, the first thing pops out there is, when it comes to our children, your eyes are dim. They just are. You know, you never see your children in the light of how everybody else sees them. Usually, everybody else sees them really for what they're worth. And you see them for how much you love them, and you excuse them, and you overlook them, and you tolerate them. Whereas other people don't have to because it's not their kids, but they do the same to theirs. Okay? Everybody looks at their kids as being more wonderful, more, you know, my kids are better than your kids. And I don't think it's so much that, it's just that you love your kids. You don't know anybody else's kids, so it's, or somebody else's kids like you know your kids. So he says his eyes were dim, so he's not going to be able to see things properly. It says Isaac was old, his eyes were dim, that he could not see, and he called he called Esau his eldest son, and said unto him, My son, and he said unto him, Behold, here am I. And he said, Behold now, I am old, I know not the day of my death. Well, he's right about that, because Isaac lives another 40 years. 40. So he definitely doesn't know the day of his death. He's 40 years off. He probably thought, I'm blind, you know, I'm just going to kick the bucket here any time, you know. I've already lost my eyesight, you know. And I mean, he lives to be 180. Verse 3, Now therefore take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver, and thy bow, and go out to the field, and take me some venison, and make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, and that my soul may bless thee before I die. Now this is called the blessing. There's already the right of the firstborn, or the right of the firstborn. And there's also the blessing. And if you want to write down Deuteronomy 21:17, the Bible tells you the firstborn gets a double portion. That's the blessing. So that's what he's going there to get, was that, you know, that before that he sold his birthright. But he hasn't sold the blessing. It's kind of like, I'm trying to get into the mind of Esau when he sold his blessing to Jacob. And really it's like, well, here, you can go ahead and have this, just a title, but there's where the money meets the road right there at the blessing. Little does he know that somebody's about to steal it from him. He said, and make me savory meat such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, and that my soul may bless thee before I die. And Rebekah heard what Isaac spake to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison, and to bring it. And Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying, Bring me venison, make me savory meat, that I may eat and bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Can't really blame this one on Jacob, can you? Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee. Go now to the flock and fetch me from thence two good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. You'll notice that I think deer and goats are in the same family. If you looked at the structure of them, there's not a lot of difference. If you were to skin one, you wouldn't know the difference if it's a small doe versus a small full-size goat. You wouldn't even know. But they're very similar. The meat would be very similar. And thou shalt bring it to thy father, and he may eat, and he may bless thee before his death. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, Behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Now here they are, the fraternal twins, and the difference between them like night and day. One of them's all hairy and muscular and a man of the earth. I'm going out to hunt, Dad. I'll bring you back some venison. The other one's a smooth, kind of a bookworm, kind of a nerd, He's sitting there working on the computer, and he's smooth. He's your indoor guy, And it says, My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me and not a blessing. And he's afraid of getting caught. And his mother said unto him, Upon me be thy curse, my son. Now, I saw something here. I just saw it this morning. My son. Is it Esau her son? Huh? They're fraternal twins, right? Is it Esau her son? But it's Jacob, my son. Jacob, my son. That's what she says over and over. My son, my son. She got two sons. Do you see? Something is wrong in the family. It says, obey my son, only obey my voice and go fetch me them. All right. I guess the first thing to draw from this is the pattern that Rebekah sets for Jacob will last 20 years. And even after that, the pattern of deception, the pattern of Jacob being the supplanter. The word supplant means to replace by force or conniving. I'm trying to think of the word I want. Scheming. Yeah, by scheming. He's going to replace Esau by conniving, scheming. You know who put that in his head? His mother. Do you know what he does from that point on? He follows that example. Now, I think he's a full-grown man at this time. I don't know how old he is. He could be 20, 30, I don't know. But I know this. I know she set him on a path. You see, you listen to me, my son. This is how you get things in life. You cheat people. You lie. You steal. And that set the pattern for him. Jacob is a con man. He has a hard time telling the truth, too. So that thing is set in force there. So you have two fraternal twins, and guess what? Mom and Dad each have a favorite, and it ain't the same one. You know that's a problem. You can say you as a mom or a dad, you can say, I relate to one more than I relate to the other. Okay? But to have a favorite, I mean, to the point to where you're pitting one against the other, that's not good. And now you've got, Rebekah and Isaac, she's eavesdropping on his conversations and seeking advantage. This is not a husband that she trusts. This is someone that she wants to outsmart. And granted, she's probably smarter than he is, but what she's doing is wrong. Now look at what it says here. Look at Genesis 25:28. Turn back a couple chapters. You've got this duality going on. Genesis 25:28, and Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. You say, well, each one of them had a parent. Yeah, but the parents don't have each other anymore. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. It's a whirlwind relationship till the kids. Till the kids. And then all of a sudden, man, there's problems. And the thing is because the parents are not in line with one another. And a lot of it has to do with how they were raised, that they're not on the same page. For example, Isaac is just a chip off the old block. Isaac has the same sin show up in him that was in his father Abraham. And it was bad in Abraham. Look at Genesis 26, verse 7. Genesis 26, verse 7. It says, and the men of the place asked him of his wife. This is talking about asked Isaac. And he said, she is my sister. For he feared to say, she is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. He's got a good-looking woman hanging on his arm. He's scared to death that one of these kings, one of these people in high authority are going to kill him and take her. Add it to his harem or whatever. Now, I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's like generational sin, I don't believe in that, but there's something to this repeating itself. Abraham did this twice. It happened in Genesis chapter, let me get this down here. It happened with Pharaoh, I think in Genesis 12, and it happened with Abimelech in Genesis chapter 20. Both times, okay, Abraham goes down into Egypt because of a famine in Genesis chapter 12, and he's scared to death that they're going to take Sarah. By the way, when it says Sarah is fair to look upon, or she was very fair, he's talking about being light-skinned. Do you know what black people? Do you know what they do to one another and how they're prejudiced against one another? If you've never seen this, you haven't been around any black people. Lighter-skinned black people are much favored over darker-skinned. You did know that, right? I remember working with a bunch of black folks, and one individual was very dark, and they were relentless on him. They ridiculed him. They talked. I mean, it was something. And, it was done in jest. I mean, it's like they didn't like, but you could see that they used that against him because he was darker skinned. And the lighter skinned you are, the better you are in the hierarchy. So you've got an Egyptian king that's looking at Sarah and going, that's a good-looking woman. I mean, that's North Africa, right? He's saying, I'm going to add her and we're going to lighten this crowd out a little bit. If you don't believe it, I don't care if you believe it or not. I'm just telling you that he saw she was fair. And in one case, it's the king's counselors that are telling the king, look at that woman. You need her in your line. Okay, anyway. Did I just cross all the boundaries of the red lines and everything? Am I going to be struck dead by the political correctness crowd, Yeah, I'm going to be canceled. Anyway, let me get back to my point. Now, when Abraham does it in Genesis 12 and Genesis 20, he doesn't really lie. Because Sarah is his sister. They have the same father, different mother. So you say, what's a half-truth is still a lie? Well, I don't know. I mean, you may not give everybody all the information they want to know, but you haven't lied to them. You just haven't told them the pertinent truth that needs to be expressed, right? That's my wife. I understand that. Isaac lies because Rebekah is Abraham's brother's son's daughter. And trust me, I had to work this out. I'm terrible at genealogy. I would make a miserable Mormon. First I thought she's a cousin, then I said, no, she's a niece. No, she's not. She's either a first cousin twice removed or she's a second cousin. But she's not his sister. Anybody know the answer? What's a first cousin twice removed? What is that? Anybody know? Y'all don't know any better. Terrible Mormons. Terrible. Aren't you glad? Anyway, so when he says she's my sister, he really is lying. Okay, she's a relation, but she's not a sister. And here's the other thing with Isaac. When Esau comes in to get when Jacob comes in to get steal the blessing from Esau, Isaac's no longer walking by faith. He walks by taste. He tasted the venison. He walks by smell. He smelled the earth and the outdoors on Jacob, and he could feel the hair on those skins he was wearing on his arms. Taste, smell, and feel, but not by faith. It says, and Jacob went nearer to Isaac his father, and he felt him, and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He felt him. And he discerned him not because his hands were hairy as his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. And he said, art thou my very son Esau? And he said, I am. He lied. And he said, bring it near me, and I will eat of my son's venison, and my soul shall bless thee. And he brought it near him, and he did eat. He tasted it. And he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Isaac said unto him, come near now, and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment. He smelled him. He smelt him. And blessed him, and said, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of the field which the Lord hath blessed. And he blessed him based on that, not by faith. His sight was not good enough that he could discern, okay? And his hearing was a little bit off too, but even though he said it's the voice of Jacob, but it feels like Esau. It tastes like Esau. It smells like Esau, but it's the voice of Jacob. So 3 out of the 5 senses confirmed, and I guess, 3 is a majority. So he went with that. Do you know what your Bible says in Romans 14:23? And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. And Isaac ate that day, blessed that day because of sight, or because of touch, because of smell, because of feeling, and not because of faith. Something else so Jacob kind of swindles him out of his birthright for a pot of porridge, okay, some chili, bowl of chili. That's what did it. And steals his blessing from him by posing to be him before Isaac, right? Let me ask you something, and I thought about this, okay? When Jacob comes back, he's expecting his brother to kill him. He's even, and this is horrible, man. I'm telling you, man, there's some family problems here. He's even got his family and his herds broken up in droves. The least of, he's got like, Bilnah, the handmaiden out front, expendable. And then Rachel's the last group with Joseph. The last group that goes forward. Why? Well, if I got to lose them, I want to lose them in this order as he kills them. Oh, good grief, man. Look in Genesis 33. I'll get there in a minute. Long chapters. Genesis 33, look at verse 4. And Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, excuse me, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Well, that was completely different than what he thought was going to happen. And it says in verse 5, and he lifted up his eyes and saw the women and the children and said, who are those with thee? And he said, the children which God hath graciously given thy servant. And now look at verse 9. And Esau said, okay, he tries to give him all these gifts. He's trying to pacify him by gifts. And Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep that thou hast unto thyself. Why isn't Esau furious? Why isn't Esau, I'm going to kill him with my bare hands. I'm going to kill him. And I thought, well, who? It's been 20 years. Who has the family herds? Who's taking care of the family herd? Esau's got all the wealth. Jacob's been gone 20 years. Jacob leaves with nothing. Comes back with wives and children and flocks. Who's got them now when he comes back? I mean, who's been taking care of them? Esau's already got all the wealth. He got it anyway. Because it doesn't say anything about Jacob taking over the family wealth. But which brings up something else. Look what satisfied Esau. Just give me the goods. Give me this, the world, give me what the world can give me, and I want it, and I want it now. If I've got it, I'm happy, brother. Go in peace. But Jacob valued a birthright that God said was important, and he valued a blessing that God said was important, and those are the things he wanted. To a point where he's wrestling God for a blessing from him. Esau, that brings up something else. Why has Isaac, why is his affection on Esau? I think it's because he's living vicariously through Esau. I think that Esau is the strength that he never was. He's the force that he's the man's man. He's a hunter, a man of the field. Look at him. A real man. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Because Jacob is this skinny, geeky looking guy. He got no hair on his arms. I mean, he just home with mama. Mama's boy. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if either one of those don't have the time of day for God, God will hate them. If they don't recognize their Creator, if they don't respect what comes out of God's mouth and God's words, it says, Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I hated. And mom and dad are partly responsible for that. If Isaac had his favorite, and Rebekah had his favorite, Rebekah did a better job than Isaac. Because Isaac, we know, has respect unto God, but his son, Esau, does not. Let me show you a verse. Look at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 16. If you don't think this is the case, this verse will prove it to you. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 16. I don't know if I told you 13, but 16. All right. He says, verse 15, look diligently lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness spring up trouble, and thereby many be defiled. Lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. And it says, for ye know how that afterward, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place of repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears. I think that might even be in reference to Isaac, talking about, it could be Esau. Anyway, in verse 16, notice it says it calls him profane. Profane. Profane means contempt or irreverence for the sacred. That's what made him profane. He had no respect for what God said was sacred, for what God said was right. He had no respect for it. And Isaac has to bear part of that responsibility because, while he's going to his basketball games and his football games, and watching him play and getting up and cheering him on, he never taught him about God. He was first string and he lettered and he was, on his way to state. But he had no time for God. He was profane. And then this weasel, that's his brother, that'll, cheat you out of your last coin, not only wants the blessings of God, he's willing to steal them. Do you not see that? I know you, they're both wrong. Yeah, but you look at God, he's like, well, at least this one recognizes me. And look at what they're willing to go through to get that blessing. To get that firstborn, they're willing to steal. This one don't care, he didn't care about anything. There's not a spiritual bone in Esau's body. Mom and Dad did that. Mom and Dad did that. Now he's responsible when he comes of age. He's got a mind of his own. He should be able to spot the error of his ways. But he's more than happy. You've been gone 20 years, man. In that time, do you realize that Edom, which means Esau is Edom, the Bible says? Do you realize that Edom becomes a great nation long before Israel? They're having to go through Edom to get to Israel or get to the land of Palestine. They're having to go right through that kingdom and had trouble. Why? They've been established. You can read about all them dukes. Duke over. You read about there's like 12 dukes that's mentioned there, I don't know what a duke is, but like a prince, I guess. I don't know. But, Esau, he's just a good old boy. And if he lived next to you, you'd swear he's one of the greatest neighbors you've ever had. Give you the shirt off his back. He just wouldn't give God the time of day. And how God looks at somebody, doesn't matter how you look at him, it's how God looks at him. It's not whom you commend, it's whom God commendeth. Right? That's what's important. Okay. Now, turn to Genesis 25:23. I'm not even going to get through all this, but anyway. You say, what went wrong? Well, Isaac has every right to bless Esau. God's the one that established the firstborn. As sorry as Esau is, God is the one that established that the firstborn gets the double blessing. So, good, bad, or indifferent, Isaac wants to obey God and give Esau the blessing. But he happens also to like him more. Okay? But look what Rebekah is told in Genesis 25:23. Genesis 25:23. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Do you see that? God said, Rebekah, there's 2 in there, and there's going to be 2 nations come out of that. But I'm telling you right now, the elder shall serve the younger. Rebekah should have rested in what God said. Because ultimately, guess what? Ultimately, all nations will serve Israel. So it's going to happen anyway. Edom's going to serve Israel if they exist. All nations will serve Israel because that's what God said. He said there are 2 nations in there, and guess what? That elder is going to serve that younger. What should she have done? She should have believed God and let it go. It's not like God's up there wringing his hand and said, Rebekah, you got to come up with something. I can't do this. I'm stumped. I don't know where we're going to go from here. And the whole point was those blessings really didn't mean all that much, because when Jacob came back, he had all the herds he wanted. He had wives, he had children, he had servants. He didn't even go back there. He went someplace else. And Esau had all the other. You see what I'm saying? When God says the elder shall serve the younger, it may not be the two boys. It may be the nations. But it didn't matter. Rebekah should have rested in that and not made a cheat and a liar out of her son. That's good for us too. And don't underestimate. You got two boys, man, you think, they ain't going to amount to nothing. You don't know. And the one you think will succeed might not. I mean, listen, intelligence is not necessarily what discerns whom God uses. It's the one that pays attention to him. And Esau doesn't pay any attention. So after eavesdropping on her husband's business, she does the following. She teaches her son to lie and deceive his own father. And I think Rebekah could have been envious of Esau, because she doesn't refer to him like she refers to Jacob, my son. You say, why? Because of his tasty venison? Oh, yeah. Women get jealous at anything, man. Anything like that. Anything that they could be jealous of a son, they could be jealous of a hobby, they could be jealous of anything that they think cuts into their affection to their husband, even their own children. If you don't understand that, you don't understand women at all. That's just the way they are. They're built like that. They don't like anybody in front of, and Eve did not like God in front of her when it came to Adam. She was jealous of the relationship. She wasn't first. And ladies, was one preacher put it this way: you may not be first, but if you let him have God first, you will always be second. That's not bad. Only one that had to use God. That ought to suffice before you tear up his spiritual life because you're not first. Or you won't let him put God first. And that's a definite lesson. She destroys in Jacob his walk by faith, and it will be 21 years of Jacob working this thing out and God working with him. It kind of goes beyond that. Jacob never does lose completely that old man, and neither will you. And that's another thing, ladies. You married who you married. You can pray for improvement, and you may get improvement, but you're not going to get rid of the old man. You can't even get rid of your old man in you. If you can't change you, how do you expect you're going to change him? There's a lot of things you're just not going to change. Now that doesn't mean, like I say, that self-correction's the best correction. To see something that you fail at and then say, okay, Lord, I need help there. And even admitting it to a spouse can help. Look, I'm like this. At least your wife say, well, at least he admits it. You know, at least he understands it. You're quicker to catch something if you acknowledge it in yourself than you are not to acknowledge it. Because then you can spot it. I mean, I can tell when certain things about me are coming out and I'm thinking, God, this is awful. Just shut me up, will you? Notice that Rebekah, because she did this, must send Jacob away for his own safety, and she never sees him again. Great plan, Rebekah. And how do you think her relationship with Esau would have been at that point? Strong, maybe? You think Esau had any respect for his mother at that point after she helped her son? Connived it, even master plan. to steal the blessing away from him? How do you think Isaac felt that his own wife connived to deceive him and to take a blessing away that God said belonged to the firstborn? I think Rebekah was a very, very lonely woman for the next 20 years of her life. Because when he comes back, she's gone already. So somehow that plan just doesn't make sense to me. She did that because she wanted her son to have something it doesn't even look like he wound up with. And then he was, not only is she deprived of his affection, he's deprived of hers. All because of a deception. And she was told by God. I'm going to reverse that thing. So Rebekah did get the curse, you know. The curse is losing the one she loved the most, because it wasn't her husband. But if she had loved God first and trusted him first, she never would have tried to deceive her husband. She'd have let it go. She'd have put it in God's hands and said, well, God said this. Doesn't matter what my husband thinks. It's what God thinks. Because he had told her. So Rebekah's left with Isaac, who is blind, and outlives her by 20 years or so. So the old blind guy that's already given out the blessing outlives his wife by 20 years. And probably she was younger than him. I don't know. I haven't looked for any ages there. And you know what else she's left with? Esau and 3 half-breed daughters-in-law that she absolutely despises. I'll read it to you. Genesis 26, verse 34 and 35. And Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Beshemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which were a grief of mind unto Isaac and to Rebekah. That boy's marrying into the wrong crowd. He's marrying out of his race. If you don't like that, you have to tear your Bible up, throw it away, set it on fire. But God told him not to do that. And it says in Genesis 27:46, and Rebekah said to Isaac, I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob take a wife of the daughters of Heth, such as these, which are the daughters of the land, what good shall my life do me? He said, I'm not having any more of that coming in, that half-breed stuff coming in. Let's send him back to our folks to get a wife from our people. And the United States government declared that a hate crime. But that's what God told him. That's why Abraham sent his servant to get a wife for Isaac from the very household that he came from. They're both from the same household, the same people, the same color. Why? That's the way God wanted it. Doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what the United States government thinks. Doesn't matter what the United Nations thinks or anybody else. It matters what God thinks. And that's what God wanted for him. So Rebekah not only spoiled her relationship with her husband, completely destroyed what little she had with Esau, but then she grieved the Lord when she doubted his promise. Grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby you're sealed unto the day of redemption. I am sure her relationship with the Lord wasn't too strong then too. Because one thing God hates, man, is doubt. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. So this thing is just on every imaginable scale, it's a nightmare. And you ever reading through there and you're going, how can God choose Jacob? Look at this guy. He's a mess. He's cheating everybody he can cheat. Well, he got it honestly, got it from his mother. At least the idea. All right, I'm going to have to stop there. Let me see if I missed anything. So you have a repeat sin with Isaac and Rebekah. You have a repeat sin with Rebekah and Jacob. Abraham and Isaac repeat sin. And then Rebekah and Jacob, you have a repeat sin going on there. where they repeat each other. In the sense that once she told him how to deceive, that he lived like that. I guess he figured that's how you get the blessings of God. You steal it from somebody else. Okay. Any questions? And you said, what did I learn from that? You may not have learned anything from that, but I can tell you this, there's ramifications for not believing God, for not trusting God, for not... Listen, there's roles in this book, okay? There's roles for the man, roles for the woman. Follow them as best you can with every ounce of strength in you. And God will bless your relationships. You get that thing out of bounds, okay? He tells that woman to be in subjection to her husband. He tells that husband to love his wife. And be not bitter against them. When you violate those things, you're going to have trouble. But if you'll say, Lord, this is what it says, and this is what I'm going to do, and you help me, God's going to bless the relationship. But you're going to have to trust God. Everything's about trusting God because God said that, it's like, okay, I did what you said, but you didn't bless it. You really think that? You think if you don't do what you're supposed to do or do what you're supposed to do, God's not going to get in the thing and help you out? Of course He is. He blesses that kind of thing because, remember, it's not your attention to your husband. It's not your attention to your wife. It's not your attention to your children. It's your attention to God and His words. That's the key. It's always been the key. About everything. Believe Him. If He says this, do it. So it's against my nature. I know it. Everything holy, everything spiritual is against my nature. He says do it anyway. Do it the best you can. And when you fail, confess it. When you fail, apologize. And then go on down the road. But marriages work anyway. Like I said, it can be great till the kids come along. It may not be so great even though the kids haven't come along. But you're going to have to deal with it. And the best way to deal with it is, how can I be in obedience to God? Okay, I forgot this. You still taping? Okay. Jacob obeyed his mother. Jacob had respect for the birthright and blessing. Jacob believed in God and wanted his blessings. That is the only difference. I mean, if you were to weigh those two boys in a balance, the only difference is this one had respect unto God and this one did not. You see, the better man, as far as a man goes, would have been Esau. He didn't seek revenge, but he didn't have any respect for God. Listen, he had the love of his father. His father loved him. He tried to please his father. You try to tell me there's something wrong with that? You can't find anything wrong with Esau until you realize that Esau doesn't care for God. Wants no part with him. People say, I just want to live my own life. It's my life, and I want to live it. And I want to live it to the fullest. I want to live every day to the fullest. What about God? Who? Oh, I don't believe in Him. Oh, no, I ain't got time for Him. That's just religion. Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I hated. What you don't want is children that you put in that situation. You get them saved, Jacob have I loved. Unsaved, Esau have I hated. Those unsaved kids, they want nothing to do with God. That's the problem. All right, now I'm done. Anybody got a question, comment?